Apple has finally revealed their M2 chip for their new redesigned MacBook Air and base MacBook Pro, and a lot of people are disappointed, so I've been digging into the technical elements of the M2, and the more I dig in, the more I realize that this might be a stopgap M1.5 chip with a ton of Apple marketing fluff hiding the truth. But don't worry, the new M2 Macs are still very good, and there's actually one way that the M2 is faster than the M1 Pro in the $2,000 14-inch MacBook Pro. But before I get into that, let me first go through everything you need to know about the M2 chip, including the performance calculations and comparisons. Now let me first give you guys a quick rundown of the M2 chip. It's basically a larger version of the M1 with the same CPU core layout with 4 performance cores, 4 efficiency cores, but with 2 extra graphics cores. On top of that, Apple improved the memory bandwidth by 50% up to 100 gigabytes per second by giving it a maximum of 24 gigabytes of even faster LPDDR5 RAM, and they also upgraded the neural engine, making it 40% faster than the M1. And according to Apple, the CPU is 18% faster and the GPU is 35% faster. Now, all of that sounds really good, but wait until you actually dig into the real numbers. About 5 months ago, I made this video on YouTube estimating the performance of the M2 chip, and the way I did it was by looking at the difference between the A14 and the 15 and then applying that to the M2. And the way I did it was by looking at 2 scenarios, with scenario 1 being that the M2 chip is going to be based on the A15 cores built on 2nd generation 5nm from TSMC, and then scenario 2 was that the M2 chip would be based on the future A16 chip built on TSMC's 3rd gen 5nm, which is known as 4nm, which the new Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 chip is already on. And unfortunately, it looks like scenario 1 is what Apple went with because they just confirmed that the M2 is on the 2nd generation 5nm, which disappointingly means that the M2 chip is based directly off of the A15 chip. So what this basically means is that the method that I used to estimate the performance is actually fairly accurate, and it matches up to Apple's own estimates of 18% faster CPU performance. And now looking at the actual graphics performance, my estimate was around 28,874 points in the metal test, and if we add 35% to the M1 chip, as you can see, we have around 28,580 points, which is around 300 points off my initial estimate 5 months ago. So I'm happy about that, but I am not happy about this performance improvement. And before I dig in and show you guys why this is so disappointing, let me first prove to you that the M2 cores are directly copy and pasted from the A15 cores. And how do I know this? Well, first of all, Apple says the M2 chip comes with a new neural engine with 15.8 trillion operations per second, which is 40% faster than the M1. However, if you dig into it, that same exact neural engine already showed up in the A15 chip. It's literally identical to this one, and it was copy pasted. But as for the nail in the coffin evidence, Apple actually gave us a real die shot of the M2 chip. And if we look really closely, we can find something very interesting. First of all, Dylan Patel last year posted an A15 chip die shot and annotation showing off the actual performance cores, the efficiency cores, and the GPU cores on the A15 chip compared to the A14. And as you can see right here, the image on the right is a screenshot of one performance core on the M2 chip compared to the A15 on the left, and if you look really closely, you'll see that they are literally identical to the T, copy and pasted over from the A15 to the M2. Not only that, but this is the efficiency core on the M2 compared to the A15, and if you look closely, once again, literally copy and pasted identical. And then finally, the graphics core A15 on the left, M2 on the right. They are literally identical. Once again, copy and paste it. And you might be wondering, why in the world does this matter at all? Well, it matters because last year I did a full analysis of the A15 chip compared to the A14, and I concluded that it was mostly a disappointing stopgap chip. The A15 performance cores were only 7.6% faster than the ones on the A14, and that was mostly because Apple simply boosted the clock speed and added a bunch of extra caches to help performance, which is exactly what they just did again for the M2. So this right here is my estimate for the single core performance of the M2 chip, and it is definitely underwhelming. Now the multi-core performance went up a bit more, being 11% faster, but that was mainly due to the efficiency cores, which was the real upgrade in the A15, being 23% faster than the efficiency cores within the A14 chip. And all of that is going to transfer over to the M2 chip, which is why my estimate of the M2 chip's multi-core performance was almost bang on with Apple's 18% improvement claim. And then finally, the GPU was perhaps the most disappointing part because the A14 chip within the iPad Air 4 was actually quite a lot faster than the new 4-core version of the A15 chip within the iPhone 13, and that is due to thermal throttling, of course. Only the new 5-core version of the A15 actually beat out the 4-core A14 in the iPad Air, and it gets even worse when you divide the metal performance by the number of cores. And as you can see, the A14 chip within the iPad Air actually has more score per GPU core than the iPhone 13 Pro Max with the A15 chip. Look at that, 3122 compared to 2887. And the reason that's important is that if we take the score of 3122 from the A14 chip per core and multiply that by 5 cores, pretending that the A14 was a 5-core chip, we would have gotten 15,610, but no, the brand new A15 chip with 5 cores is only 14,437. So there's basically no difference, and it's suffering because of the thermal throttling. So basically, the new A15 GPU cores didn't really get any faster or significantly more efficient, and Apple essentially hid this by adding another core to make it look like it's a lot faster. And guess what Apple just did this year with the M2 chip? Exactly the same thing. They added 2 more GPU cores compared to the M1, so let's dig into the numbers. On the surface, a 35% faster GPU sounds very nice, getting up to 28,874 points. But that's actually disappointing because the new M2 chip has 25% more GPU cores than the 8-core M1 chip, so it should automatically be getting a 25% performance boost, even if they were the same M1 cores, assuming there's no thermal throttling involved. So that extra 10% bringing us up to a 35% GPU performance boost is the real performance improvement that we're getting this year. So Apple did everything they could to hide this by adding more cores to the A15, which they're doing to the M2 as well. So with that said, the M2 chip is a stopgap, kind of like an M1.5, with improvements that are hidden by an increase in core counts, faster efficiency cores, more RAM, and a lot more caches and memory bandwidth. And the real upgrade is going to be the M3 chip next year, built on 3nm from TSMC. But don't get me wrong, just because it's an M1.5, it doesn't mean that these are bad MacBooks. They are definitely still good, and you still get an improvement, and it's definitely more than powerful enough for a lot of people. And finally, let's finish off with the one way that the M2 chip is actually better than the M1 Pro chip: the video encoders. Apple said that the M2 chip supports 8K H.264, HEVC, and ProRes video encoding and decoding, which is actually a huge improvement compared to not only the M1 chip, but also the M1 Pro, which did not support 8K H.264 or HEVC. And the awesome part is that the encoders scale linearly with the resolution, so if it's able to encode 8K video at 30 FPS, it should be able to encode 4K video at 120 FPS, which basically means that the video exporting for video editors is going to be a lot faster even faster than with the M1 Pro chip, which you gotta pay $2,000 to get, basically meaning that the M2 MacBook Air is gonna be the best bang for the buck video editing laptop for many people out there. But once again, if you're not a video editor, then you're not gonna see those media engine gains, and as it turns out, the M2 chip is a disappointing stopgap chip where Apple is hiding the lack of performance and efficiency gains by adding more cores onto it. So with that said, if you disagree with everything I said in this video, go ahead and comment down below. But if you enjoyed it, click subscribe so you don't miss out when we actually buy all of these laptops and compare them. Definitely check out those videos right there. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.